Can the writings of Paul actually be trusted? In this video, we're going to discuss whether or not Paul's information can be trusted. It's about as trustful, to go ahead and give you the answer, as Joseph Smith claiming that God led him to the golden tablets, and that these golden tablets, to which no one else ever identified, no one else ever seen, that they were real, and that he read them and understood them, and then went on to start Mormonism. In the same way, the Paul story is like the Joseph Smith story, or actually, I should say it in reverse. The Joseph Smith story is like the Paul story. You see, when you actually go and you start to research Paul and his validity of whether he existed or if the information that he wrote was actually true, it comes up wanting. The main reason why it comes up wanting is because, not because it countermands a lot of the things that Jesus talked about, but the main reason is because there's no validity that Paul existed, or there's no validity that Paul actually was visited by Jesus, had scales on his eyes, was given a revelation, and then went on to become this great version of Christianity that was melded together with the Jesus teachings of Christianity that became Christianity. So what you have is two opposing styles of Christianity merged into one, which is why there are many contradictions. So let's talk about Paul for a second. On the basis, we know that Paul, if he existed, was a Jewish Roman citizen who was born in Tarsus, which is in southern Turkey, and that according to church history and church tradition, he then went down to Jerusalem, was educated by Gamaliel, and I'm probably saying that name right, Gamaliel, was uh, educated by Gamaliel, and then became a Pharisee. He then persecuted Christian until he was knocked off his horse and blinded by a visit from Jesus asking why is he persecuting him. And then he becomes a great teacher of Jesus, of Christianity, the teachings of Jesus. He writes 7 epistles that people validate are written by the same individual, not saying it was Paul, and that the other pastoral epistles are certainly not written by Paul, but followers of Paul. That's the basic story that we understand about Paul. But when you dig a little bit deeper, who validates any of these stories? Who validates any of the travels of Paul? According to Paul, he met in Jerusalem with other apostles. He met with Peter and Thomas and all the other apostles at this first uh, meeting, this first convention of Christianity in Jerusalem. But these things are recorded by one of Paul's followers, who is Luke. Now, of course, this is as church tradition goes. Luke originally was a follower of Peter, and then he becomes a follower of Paul. In the same way, Clement of Rome was introduced to Peter by Barnabas, and then later becomes a follower of Paul. But all of these claims are claims only made by the individual person. None of these claims have been validated by anybody else. There are no other writings concerning this great meeting in Jerusalem that would say that, yes, Paul was there, Peter was there, Luke was there, or anyone else was there. All the information concerning this is written by the author, claimed by the author, and there is absolutely no validity to it. Now, if you're going to make up a story, one of the things that you must do is ensure that the story cannot be challenged. So when we look at the story of Paul, everything that he wrote, supposedly wrote, none of them went to Jerusalem. None of them went to Israel. None of them went to the Levant. Paul, in all his travels, he went to Turkey, he went to Greece, he went to Rome, he went to other islands. But Paul actually never went to Jerusalem, nor none of his letters, or I should say, none of his letters were ever addressed to the people in Jerusalem, to the people in Israel. Sure, in First Corinthians and in Romans, he says that all the Christianity that's happening with the Gentiles should benefit the people of Jerusalem, the poor in Jerusalem. But there is no Paul's epistle to the church in Jerusalem. None of those, that does not exist. But all of these are claims that Paul makes that no one else validates. You don't see where there's any information that Peter said that he met Paul, where Mark said that he met Paul. Matthew said that he met Paul. John said that he met Paul. There's none of this information that says that Paul was met by any of these other people. And when people try to say that, well, Clement of Rome is a contemporary of Paul, no, not necessarily. Because the claims of Clement meeting Paul and where Paul says that he met a Clement, it is highly debated, and most scholars disagree that it is the Clement of Rome to which he is speaking of. Clement simply makes the claim himself that he met Paul. And then after Clement says that he met Paul, you have other people who claim that through Clement that Paul met these people and that Clement met these people, but all of them are closed loop claims. In order to accept them, you have to accept them for exactly what they say. This is similar to how Joseph Smith claimed that he saw the golden tablets. Then followers of Joseph Smith claimed that Joseph Smith saw the golden tablets. And then additional followers said that Joseph Smith saw the golden plates. I said tablets, plates. But no one was actually present. No one actually ever saw those plates except for Joseph Smith. And so we must take Joseph Smith at his word. This is the same with Paul. No one was present when Jesus knocked him off his horse. No one has ever met this man's house, met the man that he claimed whose house he went into. No one ever was present in any of these events. No one, not Clement, not Irenaeus, not Eusebius, not Ignatius, no one was there inside the house, inside Jerusalem with Paul when he supposedly met with all the apostles. This is simply something that Paul is claiming himself. So therefore, why should we accept it? That would be like you accepting the fact that if I said that God came into my house, visited me, gave me a new revelation, or broke down the revelation that had been previously being taught and allowed for me to expound upon it, and then you just accept it because I said so. Now, of course, in today's time, we wouldn't. But let's think about who Paul was talking to. Paul was never going to Jerusalem. He was never going anywhere where he could be challenged. Paul's message, being a Greek-speaking Jew who was born in southern Turkey, only dealt with other Gentiles. He dealt with the people in Crete. He dealt with people in Greece. He dealt with people in Rome. He dealt with the church of Corinth. He dealt with the church in Ephesus. He never dealt with the church in Jerusalem. He never dealt with the church in modern day Haifa or Tel Aviv. He never dealt with those areas. Only dealing with those Greek-speaking churches, those Greek-speaking Christians who were of Greek origin or Roman origin, and they did not travel to Jerusalem. They did not deal with the people in Jerusalem. If you're a believer of the Bible, of course, you're going to take Paul at his word because you believe that this God breathed it into him. But for those of us who ask questions, those of us who critically think, we recognize that there is absolutely zero authenticated connection between Paul and anyone else who claimed that they were an apostle. That everybody who supports Paul in that time frame were people who never had contact with any of those so-called apostles either, and primarily dealt with the Greek-speaking Roman society. So Paul is as much of a fraud as Joseph Smith or anybody else who makes a claim and have absolutely no validation to whether or not those claims are true or those claims are false. This is one of the reasons why Paul's writings are became unacceptable to me when I was a Christian, because there's absolutely no way to validate it. And then when we dig just a little bit deeper, we see that this Roman citizen born Greek speaking Jew who was highly educated, if he ever existed, would have known of the story of the Bacchae, which is a Dionysus story of a man who doubted Dionysus, persecuted the people of Dionysus, the followers of Dionysus, and then through miracle became a supporter of Dionysus. Sounds very similar, doesn't it? Paul would have known this because this was still one of the most popular stories of the time. So always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. The journey Good vibrations.